All right, everyone. I am Jason from the class of 2014. I was an economics major, and I am currently working in investment consulting industry. So Shania invited me here, and I am here to talk a little bit about, um, what kind of, I know that you have a lot of formal kind of presentations from other firms. So this is not necessarily about where I work, but more about how, um, REIT has prepared me for what I'm doing right now. And this is kind of intended also to be a dialogue. So if you have any questions, you can either unmute yourself and let me know, or raise your hand, or put it in the chat. So I have a couple of slides prepared. I will go through a little bit of my background, and we'll take a look at um, an actual job description for an entry-level position here at Makita, and then try to connect that with the things that you can do at REIT. And then I have a section of resources at the end. So we'll go through them if we have time verbally. If not, I have sent this to Shania as well. So you can ask Shania to send this deck and some of the other resume related resources to you. Okay. My background is like I said, I'm from the class of 2015 economics major. I did a couple of extracurricular stuff like International Student Advisory Board, which is a part of International Student Services. Not sure if they're still there. I took econometrics and wrote a thesis on real estate market in China. Right now, I am an investment analyst at Makita Investment Group, which if you have been to the RVK presentation the other day, the work that we do is similar to RVK, and that it is an investment consulting firm. We have clients like pension funds and endowments, like university endowments or museum endowments or whatnot. And then we advise them on how to invest their things. And in my role is more of a generalist and client-facing side. Meaning by generalist, I mean that it is not a research, side. In the research side, a lot of people develop a specialty. So they might develop something like passive investments or hedge funds or bonds or something like that. But as a generalist, I know a little bit of everything. And then it is more oriented towards working with the clients. And in terms of specific functions, there's a lot of project management and reporting, clients' portfolios performance. So that includes things like team performances. I will write commentaries or memos about those investments, or some other requests that they may have, that things that they will need to do, maybe something that they are planning to take a lot of money out. So, I would help plan that, either calculating where we can take that money out based on their investment policy statement, which is the guiding document that they have, that the clients have. A little bit more of my background, going deeper, further back. This is more of a job history kind of background. I was an international student from Burma, from Southeast Asia, took economics. And in the summer of sophomore year, I went back to Burma to do a communications internship at a place called Proximity Designs, where I kind of found that I am not necessarily a good storyteller. I am better at technical writing. I can just write about facts, but it's harder for me to tell stories. So that's one lesson I learned. In the summer after junior year, I worked for the micromentor program at Mercy Corps, which is one of the largest nonprofit agencies based in Portland. There, I was a survey analyst, meaning that I was asking their clients and figuring out what kind of benefits they have received from using that program called Micromentor, which is the free mentorship program for entrepreneurs. I graduated in 2014 of May and was jobless for about 6 months. And eventually that connection with Micromentor came back to me, and I got the first job at Mercy Corps / Micromentor with the same team. So that's my internship to first job success story. After working for 2 years there, I have always wanted to do something in finance. So one opportunity came up was with a retail insurance sales. Basically, it's I'm just trying to make it sound nicer. It's an insurance salesman position, and I was there. I was at 2 firms. The first firm was I lasted only 6 months, and then in the second firm, I was there for about a year and a half. It was hard. It was a sales position with commission only work. I did learn a lot in terms of finance and insurance and things like that, but it's I don't recommend that as the first job or even second job. But eventually I know that it's not a viable option for me for long term. So I started looking for other opportunities as well. And this time I applied to RVK among other places as an investment analyst position, where I was for about 2.5 years prior to my current job there. This is like I said, it's an investment consulting firm. So there are institutional clients. So I don't have to look for my own clients. And then as a performance analyst is the place where I could learn a lot about the terminology, the ideas, and how to look at those reports and how to do a lot of technical basics in terms of investments. And typically employers also sponsor CFA exams. So that's where I got my CFA level 1 exam done.
And then
last,
Jason, could you explain to them what the CFA?
Right.
Yeah.
So CFA exam is Chartered Financial Analyst exam. It is one of the probably the most recognized certification designation that you can get as a financial professional. It has 3 levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. As college students, you can sit for level 1, but level 2 and 3 needs professional experience. They're said to be hard. Well, at least level 1 was hard, and so it's prestigious in that sense. for example, in my current role as investment analyst, my position requires for me to be in that program. So I didn't have to have all three levels, but I have to have started either enrolled in it or passed level 1 or something of that sort. So that's where I'm at right now. And Shania shared a resource in the chat. So here are a couple of challenges that I have faced in my time at Reed. Some of that may apply to some of you, some of that will not. I was an international student on an F1 visa, so that was a real challenge for me in that I wanted to work at a US firm, and a lot of firms are not really want to invest in a freshly graduated person for an expensive H-1B process. But for a lot of international students, there are other sort of creative ways to either work for a US firm or get into the finance and consulting in the US. Especially for most of the international students, those ways are something like going back to your home country and starting to work there, or get a job at the firm in those branches and then coming back to the US or just working there, something like that. But my home country was not a good candidate for that, so I needed to get a first job at the US here. The other challenge that I thought was that because Reed was not located in New York or East Coast in general, it was a disadvantage. It was, it's partially true if you want to work in places like Goldman Sachs or McKinsey. But even then, we still have places like Seattle and San Francisco, which have branches of those big firms. So that was a perceived challenge that was not really true. And I was also afraid that my GPA that was lower than 3.5 was going to be a deterrence. It can be partially true for a freshly graduated person or people seeking internships during your junior year. But it is not that much of a big deal, especially after your first job. So that, don't let that give you anxiety. And then the last challenge or fear that I had was that I needed to get a finance job right out of college, or consulting or finance job right out of college. But that was not true, because I worked at in my history, there's like I worked for the nonprofit, and then for the retail sales job, and then now I am where I want to be. So that's it's not necessary to get a finance job. So just take whatever job that you can get in this environment that you like doing and that you can learn. So here, any questions so far?
Did you feel like when you left Reed that you had the skills in your toolkit to start finding a job and knowing kind of what you
with finance
need
job?
to know? Yeah.
Not really. Well, I would say that I had the I can learn attitude, but looking back, I didn't know much about finance at all. So the economics knowledge was applicable, but it's not, there, yeah, it was not necessarily going to translate into finance. But even when you still need to learn, with each firm, with each role. So that doesn't matter, I would say, in a sense. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. And there's also the piece where I can be critical about myself a little bit too much sometimes. So when you ask that, I probably was not as confident when I was right out of college and looking for places to interview with and so forth. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other questions? If not, we're gonna look at the actual job description and more like, the role description of the entry-level job at Makita, which is a performance analyst position. This is the role that I did at RVK, and this is also where I learned a lot about the details of what the finance terms are, and do the reports and things like that. So here, typical entry-level role. So it's data heavy position. So you will gather, organize, coordinate data, which you probably are doing a lot at Reed. Whether if you are in social sciences, you may not be dealing with big or numerical data that much, but you have that basic skills of gathering, sourcing, and then putting them in different buckets and organizing to be readable and to use that in applicable ways. And analyze and evaluate, kind of same kind of idea, but this is more of looking at that data and information and trying to come up with your interpretation of what that means. And then that position also requires you to familiarize yourself with investment statistics or like statistics in general, because in finance, a lot of what we do, especially things like consulting, we're sort of looking forward into the future and predicting, well, not predicting, but doing sort of statistical and probability kind of analyses, a lot of that. So having a basic and thorough understanding of things like standard deviation and mean and normal distributions and things of that nature, which you will probably also get through some courses at Reed. And another function is to apply the knowledge of indicators, markets, attributions, benchmarks. So this is more going into interpretation. It is not only looking at the client-specific portfolios and their data, but also looking at what the external factor or what the environment that portfolio is in is doing, or going more micro in the attribution. For example, this means that within the client's portfolio, which investment, which project that they are invested in is responsible, or which project is the cause of the returns that they are getting. So that's just looking at which managers are good, which managers are not so great, so on and so forth. So that we can keep track of them and hire or fire as necessary. And then because it is a data role, there's a lot of data coming in. A lot of the times there are more than one people working on different pieces of data, so they can get dirty sometimes. So maintaining that database, organizing that data, and making sure that they are up to date is kind of part of the role. So, so here I'm gonna talk in next few slides about the skills that you can learn or develop at Reed. And so cliches that everybody talks about of liberal arts experience is critical thinking, reading and writing, and communication skills. This is, it always kind of make me wonder when I was a student, because these are just so vague and broad that I have no idea what they really mean. So to connect that with finance specifically, this is like, by critical thinking, it means looking at the data, for example, and see what the causes are, whether the data is actually right or correct or accurate. Because sometimes even when the product manager, so for example, a product manager would be like Vanguard, is a investment provider who would send out a report, but sometimes they can be wrong, or banks who are keeping records of the client's information, they can also be wrong. So looking at that and being able to spot them, or looking at a written commentary from a manager to see whether they are making things sound nicer than they are. So critical thinking is that kind of broad skill come into handy in that. And then reading and writing skills in this position that we were just looking at doesn't include a lot of writing skills. Well, in terms of client-facing writing documents, but everybody these days are writing a lot of emails and whatnot. So reading skills, writing skills are important. Maybe making it clear and concise is probably one of the most important skills that we can continue developing all the time. Because when I was at Reed, especially when I look like at my first papers at Hume class, it was bloated and I used a lot of flowery language, and then I have no idea what I was talking about. And especially these days, I have a hard time reading longer passages and things like that. So short and concise is good. That's what I'm trying to say. Communication skills, people also talk a lot about this. This is usually I used to think of it more as a verbal skill, a social skill, but it's not necessarily just verbal, like being able to talk to somebody. It's verbal, it's written, and it's also having your own clear thoughts as well. Because if you don't have clear thoughts, you cannot really communicate clearly to other people as well. So I'm still working on it, especially the verbal communication. I can go tangents and talk a lot, but trying to be concise. And communications include like receiving as well. So for example, asking a person to repeat what they are saying if they don't catch, if you didn't catch what they're saying. So I was afraid to do that when I was younger, but it's not to be ashamed, something to be ashamed of. So this one is a little bit more about the activities that you can do at Reed. If you're in economics course major or other social sciences and we already have taken the intro course, it's useful to have at least some basic understanding of economics in general if you want to work in finance and consulting. It is also good to have a statistics course taken because like I said, we use a lot of these concepts. And if you're taking CFA, one of the sections that you will need to learn or study is purely statistics. So there are a variety of options that we like: easy econometrics, which I took, hard econometrics, or even harder ones at math or some other places. Just to be familiar with the concepts, don't need to be the hardest one. I'm not good with theoretical math, by the way. So don't feel bad if you are not good at theoretical math. I can't even do calculus. I have no idea what calculus is. And it's also helpful to have extracurricular activities like student clubs or volunteering. This is where you can kind of learn more about leadership skill, which is also a vague term that people throw around, which basically means being able to plan and organize things and communicate clearly. It's also kind of good for you to develop to better understand what you're good at or what you like or what you don't like and so on and so forth. Networking with alumni is a good practice too. And then you probably are already doing this, which is seeking internships for the summers in sophomore and junior years. It's just good experience to present yourself, as a freshly graduated person. I see that a couple of you are here. Please let me know if you have any questions. You can type it in or hands up or whatnot. Oops. This slide is more about the skills that you kind of develop on your own, but not necessarily like sanctioned by Reed or, this is more of self-study kind of thing. If you're interested in finance and consulting, Excel is a very important tool. I use Excel every day, even on weekends. And I have a list of useful formulas that you can start learning, learn about formulas, learn about pivot tables, and learn how, doing the cleaning and filtering and things like that, the basics that you won't need a lot of time to learn those things. And finance terms, concepts, and vocabulary is helpful. I have also listed a list of terms that, the basic terms that you can look them up on Investopedia, which are usually brief Wikipedia-like articles. So no, you don't have to read books, which I'm not gonna make you do that. This is finance terms may be helpful, but not necessary. Like I said, when I was even interviewing for RVK, which is my real first finance job, I didn't know a lot of these things. CFA, Chartered Financial Analyst, level 1, like I was mentioning earlier, college students can sit for level 1. Level 2 and 3 needs professional experience, but it is a large financial and time investment. So it is recommended to study for 300 hours for level 1, and then you will have to pay for the exam fees and the study materials and things like that. So it may not be a good time. You may not have resources during read. So it's okay if you can't do that. Again, this is helpful. I would recommend definitely doing Excel, but these two are kind of like second priority and then third priority kind of thing. One other thing that you can develop that I think is not really talked about, at least when I was going through sessions like this before as a student. There isn't a lot of talk about this, so I just wanted to put this in. Self-awareness is a good thing to have, good practice. So it is not just woo-woo psychological thing. It means just knowing yourself in terms of what you like, what you don't like. It can be about your environment. It can be about your personality. It can be about your health or medical conditions, or many other things. It's just knowing your strengths will help you to talk about those strengths at interviews. Weaknesses, sometimes there's a cliche question of what is your weakness in interviews. There are ways to answer that in a positive light, but here the weakness that I was talking about is more of a self-awareness. Just know that you're not so great at that, or you don't like it, or so on and so forth. And then likes and dislikes are things that you like doing in your profession, things that you don't like doing in your profession, or the kind of people that you like working with, or the kind of people that you don't like working with. So things like that. Having an idea of that is a good practice. You won't know all the answer at the same time. So that's a slow process as well. So here's a list of questions that I wrote out that you can think about later. What you like doing, what you don't like doing. They could be activities or skills. Do you like doing data work? Do you like doing storytelling? Do you like writing more technical? That could be more like factual writing. Do you like meeting with clients or research or so on and so forth? And then which may or may not align with what you're good at doing. So this is more of your skill set kind of thing. Are you naturally good at looking at the data? Are you good at technology or writing, so on and so forth? And then there are things that you are not good at doing, but you either want to learn more about that, or it's okay if you have learned that. And then there are things that you are not good at, but also have no interest at all that you don't want to learn. So things like that you might want to avoid. So something like that might be sales for me. And other examples of these questions have like, do you need an alone time after interacting with people? So this is sort of introversion, extroversion kind of question. I'm naturally introverted, so after meeting with people for a while, I need my alone time. And the next question, do you prefer having specific expectations or parameters? It's it's also coming from my own experience. Usually when people ask me to do something and I have no idea where to start, I can kind of figure it out, but at the same time, it's unnerving. So if you have that preference, it might be good to have a practice of asking more specific expectations, or just know your own preference. And to give you more example about the physical environment or something external, if you're sensitive to something, a certain sense like lights or sounds, or if you get overstimulated by those senses, it might be also a good idea to know those. For example, in crowds when there's a background noise, I have a hard time hearing people. So I didn't really know, but I know that it was there, but I never consciously knew about that until recently. So these days when I talk to people, I would just get people to quieter place so that I can actually pay attention and listen to them. And the last two questions, like I was saying, what kind of people you like, what kind of people or cultures you don't like. This may be something like, some teams or cultures may be very energetic and very loud, and some people jive with that. Some, I would prefer like quieter teams, quieter people. Some people may be more aggressive or competitive, and some people jive with that. Some people don't. So again, more self-awareness is good to have. Just not only to get your first job, but also to be able to have successful and thriving life at that. Any questions for now? If not, I will roughly go through these resources. Again, I sent this deck over to Shania, so feel free to ask her for that, as well as the resume template and two samples that I forwarded to her. So here are the internships that Makita has for this summer. There are 4 roles. Some of these roles might be more than one position, so it's not just limited to 4 people. I think there might also be some entry-level positions open, so feel free to check out their LinkedIn or the Makita website. So research intern, this is more on the research side, as in the research of market research and manager research. Data science team this is a little bit more quant side of things. Private market investment intern is kind of also, a lot of these internships are just a lot of data heavy stuff, but different departments, so to speak. So private markets is more about private equity for investments and hedge funds and things like that. And this performance analyst intern is related to the performance analyst role that we looked at. And this is more of the generalist, bread and butter, entry-level position at at Makita, but in an internship position. Here's a list of local firms. By local, I mean Portland metro area, that you can look up as a resource when you're looking for internships and when you are job searching. There's probably a lot more consulting firms in this section. Yeah, but these firms are also good to look at. This middle column, something like Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley are big firms, but the branches in the local area are primarily wealth management, which means that they have smaller teams and their hiring is not on always. But I know that Makita, RVK have a lot of open positions frequently. Fisher can have open positions frequently. KeyBank and investment banking and other banking departments tend to have a lot of open positions frequently. DA Davidson also have a lot of positions, but they have a minimum GPA requirement of 3.5. So, that can be tricky for deflated grades at Reed. And then there are a lot of smaller boutique firms in the area. So just getting alerts from places like Indeed would be helpful. This is a list of retail insurance and investment sales firms that you might come across on in job searching. If you're into sales, they might be a good fit, but it was not for me, and I can imagine that a lot of readies probably are going to enjoy these roles as well. So just to note in case you get recruiting outreaches. Here's the list of Excel functions that you can learn. So this is the basic that you probably should just know. So things like summing up numbers and counting numbers, averages, minimum, maximum numbers. Product is the multiplication of two numbers or more. Concatenate is joining different pieces of text together. Left, right is like extracting pieces of text from a cell, from the left or from the right. And then, knowing how to create charts and graphs, which is like a click of a button, but it is an art, I suppose, to know good kind of chart that you can easily communicate visually. And then medium formulae will be VLOOKUP and conditionals like if or sum if, count if, so on and so forth. And then if you want to go advanced, it's like nested conditional. So that means that if something, if this cell is greater than 10, right? If this cell is less than 100, then do this. If it is larger than this, then do this. And then if this is, it's like you can say that if, and do a couple of conditions. Sorry, that might be confusing. And it's also good to know a little bit more about pivot tables, which are sort of using the data to show 3 or more variables. So let's say that I have a data about Reed students attendance on a certain, of a week. So if I want to take a look at which students who are present and not present at a certain date, so that 3 variables of who is there, when is it, whether they are present or not. So those are a good way to summarize different kinds of data. So that's, and conditional formatting is just making spreadsheet cells to be of a certain color or of a certain font based on whatever condition it is. So if the cell number is more than 100, make it bold or make it green or something of that sort. You can always Google how to do X or how to use so on and so forth, and you will get a lot of Excel resources. That's how I have learned Excel, and that's how I'm still learning Excel. And here are a few 3 sites that you can, just start looking at. And basically this list is sort of a summary of these 3 sites and from my experience of working in investment consulting. And this is the list that I have mentioned before about finance terms that you should probably know. These are all, most of these are available on this finance term dictionary on Investopedia. They're short. Some of that, like, these acronyms are good to know. Some of this, like EBITDA, you will hear that a lot if you're in the investment club or if you listen to the news. I don't use that in my work, but just good to know what it's all about. It's more important if you're in corporate finance or in investment banking. So this is more of the acronyms that you should just know. These are the actual terms that I thought you should sort of look it up on Investopedia. Basics of terms. Yeah, you don't need to know the formula, the equations, or how to actually do the calculation of yield curve or something of that sort. Just conceptually know. This is the list of statistics. And then these are more like names that you should be familiar with. So just, that's pretty much what I have. And here is my contact information. Oh, like I said, I have a template that you can use. And then an example of my resume from my junior year, which is not following that template, but close enough. And then my current resume for you to sort of see and get the ideas. So let me show you that template. Just to, if we have, just quickly, 1 minute. So this is, just a template of a resume that I thought you might find useful. This is, I would say that I wanted to share this because this is conservative enough for finance and consulting, but also I used variables of some fonts and colors to make sure that it's not all bland and not noticeable or memorable. And you can use this to change your experience, put things in. Here I have preset style, so you can make sure that everything is kind of consistent and be able to make sure that everything looks good. So that's a template that I have for you that you can ask from Shania or just going to this link that I have.
Goodness. Thank you. Those are all fantastic resources.
Yeah, of course, you're welcome. I think you're mute, Shania.
I am mute. I was gonna say, since I have that pulled up in front of me, I'll just go ahead and forward the slide deck and all those resources now before I forget. And yeah, that was super helpful and also perfectly timed.
Yeah, an hour. I'm glad.
Basically what I do with these sessions is, since they're recorded, I usually get them posted to CLBR's YouTube page within the next day. So you all can expect to find them on our YouTube page. And then Jason, I'll follow up with you after this session and send you the link in case you want it.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, feel free to connect me on LinkedIn, or like I can review resumes in addition to Shania helping you do the resume reviews and so on and so forth. Or let me know if you're applying to Makita. Can people know here?
Yeah. Is there anything particular about their, like, do you know anything about that internship process? Like that?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, is there anything about the recruiting process? Like, should they meet with a recruiter before they submit applications? What are the like rounds of review or rounds of interviews like? I
don't know the details.
Okay.
Yeah, what I can do is I can let the HR people know that so and so is applying for that. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. If there's no questions, I will let you go.
Awesome.
Thanks for the great information. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Declan.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later, Shania.